These cards tie back to so many memories.
What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. We've got Brett McGrath from the Stacking Slabs Podcast on the show today. Many of you may be familiar with Brett from his appearance on one of our roundtable episodes on the Worlds Collide podcast. We also had Chuckster on there, shout out Chuckster. But more recently, he was featured on the WTC WrestlingTradingCards.com YouTube page, where Tony hosted a panel of some of the top minds in the wrestling card space. And they discussed Panini taking over the WWE license. You can go check out that video on the WTC archives, or if you want to check out the Worlds Collide episode that featured Brett. But just in case you haven't seen those, or you haven't listened, you're not familiar, Brett McGrath is the host of the Stacking Slabs Podcast, which is one of the top sports cards, trading cards podcasts out there, in my opinion. New episodes drop every Wednesday and every Friday. It's a must listen, and you should definitely go out of your way to check out the show. I'll put the link in the show notes to where you can find it, and then, pick out the platform that you like to listen to, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, maybe it's another platform. I don't know, whatever you guys like to listen to podcasts on, you can find it at the link that I'll send below. And please subscribe to his podcast as well. Tell a wrestling fan, get the word out about how great the Stacking Slabs podcast is. But I just wanted to chop it up a little bit today with Brett about, you guessed it, wrestling cards. Brett has always had some great takes about the hobby. Whether it's sports cards, whether it's wrestling cards, maybe blending the two, maybe it's changing a mindset the way you collect. Maybe it's changing mindset in what you're interested and maybe what you're not interested in anymore. Maybe it's mindset changes of, making statements about when you're not right all the time. Hey, this is what I was going for. It didn't work out. That's on me. That's the kind of perspectives that Brett brings to the table, and it's really refreshing compared to a lot of the other content out there that we see specifically in the sports card world. But I'm hoping our conversation today will help you, the wrestling fans, or if you collect sports cards as well, or maybe you're watching this because you saw Brett tagged in it and you're coming over to the fold for wrestling cards. That's the goal, and hopefully this video will help all of you out no matter where you're at in the hobby space. If this is your first time checking out the channel, greatly appreciated taking the time out of your day to come watch what me and Brett have to say. And if you wouldn't mind, please hit that subscribe button. Like this video if you're digging it so far. If you've been watching the channel for a while now, again, greatly appreciated the continued support. If you haven't already, hit the like button. And share this with a friend. Share this video with a wrestling fan. Again, I mentioned the sports card people coming in. I've been talking about that for a while. There's a lot of closet wrestling fans out there. They don't want to admit wrestling is cool. They don't collect wrestling cards yet. I think that will eventually change. I don't know how long that will take. But this is the kind of content we want to get to them, that, hey, wrestling cards are cool. People in all different walks of life collect wrestling cards. So hopefully this video will educate and entertain everybody today. Before we get into that, just a few other ways of how you can help continue to show your support to Wrestling with Cards. As I said, please subscribe, give me a like, share it with a friend, copy the link, paste it, text, email, social media, tag me in it. There's all different ways to get the word out about this video and my podcast. Did I say podcast? Speaking of podcasts, the Wrestling with Cards podcast. It's a solo show I do, just random talks about wrestling, the hobby, sometimes going over some past episodes I've done on this channel and kind of rethinking some of them, reworking it, giving updated thoughts. Links below for that. Please subscribe to that podcast as well. Leave me a review if you like it. You want more wrestling card podcasts? Fear not. Worlds Collide. Myself, Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com. Talking all things wrestling, bantering back and forth. Some of the topics you will hear about there, you're not going to see here. We also like to do our roundtable episodes where we bring in guests. We also like to do This Is Your Card, kind of like This Is Your Life, where we do kind of a deep dive into a specific wrestler or talent and talk about their cards, what we like, what we don't like, rookie cards, etc. Links below to that podcast as well. And again, subscribe, share it with a wrestling fan. Links to all my social platforms down there. If you would like to give me a follow, that'd be greatly appreciated. Again, you can tag me in any kind of wrestling card posts. I always like it, give you a shout out. And if you'd like to support Wrestling with Cards monetarily, because there are costs that go into producing content, links below to my Patreon page where you can join the Wrestling with Cards Patreon community, where there's bonuses, you get your name in the credits, come on the show, request show topics specifically for you. There's also links to my eBay store if you'd like to buy some cool stuff. I've always got stuff in there from 99 cents all the way up to the higher end stuff. Always rotating inventory, new stuff all the time. And I would say normally links to buy me a coffee, which is still down there. I drink coffee a lot, as you know. It takes a lot of caffeine for me to get going and get these videos. However, today, as a salute to Brett from Stacking Slabs, we are drinking a key lime pie bang. So if you would like to help contribute $1 to going towards the Bang Fund, greatly appreciated. But now let's kick it to the conversation. There's another tip of the hat to the Stacking Slabs podcast with Brett McGrath from the Stacking Slabs podcast. Enjoy. Brett, what's up? Thanks for coming on. And before I let you talk, I knew you were coming on. I normally am a coffee drinker. Went with a bang today.
Oh man, I appreciate that. What's the flavor on that? I didn't catch it.
Key lime pie.
How is that? I haven't had that one.
I like it, but I like the key lime pie. I like the apple crisp. I like those kind of weird flavors they've been coming out with lately. So
the oddball bangs.
Yep. Just like the cards, right?
Yeah. So I actually, I have this like routine where if I do get out of the house, I go to the gas station. I try to get like a few, and when I need them during the week, I'll use them. And for the last like 3 or 4 days, I haven't been able to get out of the house. And I would love to have a bang right now. So, but I'm settling with just a Diet Coke. So.
Hey, you use what you can.
That's right. But I'm good. I'm always excited to talk with you. Wrestling cards are my favorite topic, so I'm excited to jump in.
All right, let's start with, you did a reveal on, well, I knew this was coming a long time ago, and of course it was a long time because of PSA, but you recently did a PSA reveal on your Instagram Live, and just talk about what it's like getting some of those cards back, as far as like maybe you submitted some of them to sell, maybe you submitted some of them to keep, but then maybe your opinion on those flipped. Just overall observation when you get this massive PSA order back, which I encourage you guys to go to his Instagram and check it out.
You're actually catching me at a really good time in talking about it. I think when you get an order back that's is significant as what I got back, there is a lot of decisions to be made. I think, and just for your listeners, it was 171 cards. It was, I can't remember exactly the cutoff date of what PSA considered modern and ultra modern. I will say, I think the oldest card in that sub was the 2002 Royal Rumble Randy Orton. I think that was like the cutoff, which I got an 8 on. I was hoping for a 9, but an 8's good with that. So I was cool with that. I might try to upgrade at some point. But a lot of it was, we had Wrestling All-Stars, we had 85 tops, we had 87 tops. We had some classic stuff, which I know is, Zhan, your favorite set.
Of course.
But and then I do want to spend some time on this one if we get to talking about it. But my favorite cards of all of them are cards that aren't ever talked about, and are these ECW figure cards. So
yes.
I got a New Jack here. This got an 8. But these cards were not in. There was like 2 of these cards that were graded in PSA's registry. ECW is my favorite wrestling promotion of all time. So I collected these figures growing up. I never at the time really thought about the cards, but being a card collector now, it was like, that was like my priority. It was like, how can I get these cards, start collecting them? And so when I got the set back, there was All-Stars in there, but I was most excited for these. So I think my computer's going a little wonky right now. So I was very excited about those, but then it was decisions to be made. It was trying to figure out, okay, I have this bill for this submission. I got to figure out, what do I want to keep? How do I want to cover it? And luckily at the time I put up a Brady card, Tom Brady card, that just, it blew away my expectations based on how hot his market is. So that one card covered the entire cost of the sub, which was fantastic. And it put me kind of in this position of like, okay, now I have all of these cards. What do I really want? And what do I sell in order to get me to that card that's out there that I'm chasing or that I'm really after? So that's kind of, I am still working through that process right now with the cards, and it's still evolving. Like 2 weeks ago, there are cards that I'd say, I want to keep these, but now based on some stuff I'm seeing and want, I'm like, you know what? I don't want these as much as I want that card that's out there. So let me put these up for auction. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with it.
A couple of things I'll touch on. Let's touch on the pop reports. Me and you are both in agreement that I think a lot of the pop reports get propped up as being, oh, it's a pop one. But my argument is half the stuff that people are saying about that, there's no demand for. I think it's completely opposite with these ECW cards. Not only are they hard to grade, but this is one of those things kind of like the All-Stars. I think this is going to be another one of those sets right in line with the All-Stars eventually that, the pop reports are going to matter. We're going to start seeing these things. So what do you think about pop reports and demand on these kind of things you're getting back?
So I see this a lot with wrestling cards people slide into my DMs, and I try to educate on this just because there are so many new people coming in. But just because your card is a pop one, and it doesn't mean that you can put that card up for $2,000. Like that means, like you said, like chances are no one graded it, and there's a reason for that. I see a lot of positioning out there around that. In fact of the matter is like there's a lot of these cards, like the classic cards that I talked about, they're commodity cards. Like they were printed and no one graded them, and now some people are, and some people are trying to get maximum dollar for it. And it's just kind of a little bit of funny business.
Right.
So there's that. But with the ECW cards, it goes back to like ultimately the most cliche saying in the hobby is collect what you like. These cards tie back to so many memories of me as a wrestling fan. And to be honest with you, Zhan, like I really don't care if people just listen to this and say, oh, like I love ECW, I'm going to go do the same thing. And then they get popular. Like that would be great. I'd love that. But to me, like these cards, like I'm sitting here looking at freaking Lance Storm. I mean, and like how many good matches can you remember Lance Storm having? So that's what I love about these. But I do think there's a lot of people our age that had that ECW made them feel a certain way, and it tied back to certain memories. And they just might not have connected the dots of like, oh, there were cards with those figures. Oh, now that there's cards, I've never thought about grading them. So I don't try to hype up what I have, but I know that there's been a lot of interest from ECW fans and listening to me talk about them to be like, you know what, I want to do that same thing.
Yeah, those hit me when I started buying those, similar to how the All-Stars do. And it was one of the few wrestling card things where I was like, I want to put the whole set together. I am not a set collector. I hate having crap everywhere. But I don't know. I know, like, I think maybe your opinions changed a little bit on the All-Stars set when you got these back in hand from PSA. Do you see the correlation between the two? How are you feeling about those two sets as set collecting?
This is a great like segue into my mind right now and how I'm thinking. So when I got them back, they're beautiful cards. Like, we don't need to beat a dead horse.
Yeah.
All-Stars are great. When I got them back, I immediately started a process like, okay, well, I've got like a really, really good jump on finishing this entire set. There's enough where it was like, this is going to take significant work. And for me, and like cards like that aren't serial numbered, and I know they weren't printed to the moon, but like cards that are just like paper kind of base cards at their core. Like for me, if I'm collecting those things, I want the highest grade possible in those things. And so as I'm trying to process my current grades and how I'd want to upgrade what I have and then go out and chase and get the highest grades and stuff, I said, this is going to be a ton of work. And, I'm not sure my like heart is in it like it would be with these ECW cards, and making sure like there's the David Pecks, there's the Rob Englands, and these guys are the all-star guys, and they've paved their way. Like for me, I want to like collect and be the guy for something different. And maybe it's these ECW cards, but I just got a little overwhelmed, especially because I have a lot of motivations and desires with other wrestling cards that now I'm to the point where it's like, all right. And this is honestly like, this is a night project for me tonight. It's sit down with all of the all-stars and figure out who I want to keep and I have a connection with. Your Bobby the Brains, your Bruiser Brodies, your your Jake the Snakes, like those cards off the top of my head, like I'm not selling those because I have a connection with, but it's the other ones that I think I'm going to put out. So if you're listening to this and you are building out all-star sets, chances are there's going to be some up for auction on in PSA slabs.
Another thing you kind of mentioned when we first started, you're talking about the submission, and then just now, is the fact that it's okay to change your mind, and it's okay to either like something or not like something, and then flip your opinion on it. And you said getting rid of the Tom Brady. Maybe you weren't necessarily super attached to it, but you used it to then fund stuff you did want and pay for that. So I think in wrestling cards specifically, there's a lot of people out there that think that, okay, I planted my flag in this and I have to stay in this lane. I can't do anything else. What's your opinion on that as we then transition into talking about some of the more modern cards that you picked up lately?
Yeah, I think tastes evolve and things change, and the world of cards and wrestling cards in general, it might not feel that way, but there's a lot of opinion, there's a lot of options, and to me, it's always that moment where you're laying the cards out there and when you see something you like, and that's a move I like to make a lot.
Yeah,
it's like,
same.
I'm not made of money. I don't have just thousands of dollars laying around when a card pops up. A lot of my the value I have is in my cards. So I have to make decisions. I have to look at stuff. And usually there are those cards, and Zhan, I'm sure you've been through this, and I know your listeners probably have too, where you're looking at it and you're just like, there's no way I'm ever going to sell this card. So you push it to the side, but then it starts to, and the easy hack for me is always like, if I look at the card that's not mine, if this card were in my collection, where would it rank? And if it starts to get into that like top 10 area, that's when I know I need to sell something else. So I think you have to be adaptable as a collector, knowing that taste change, knowing that there's an evolution. And also there's a market component to this. And I know this is a wrestling card show, but with the Brady card, I was at the National and I bought the Brady card for a price that it was a PSA 10. It was a serial number out of 50. It was an X-Fractor shiny. And I just looked at the Brady market and I said, I got to just see what I could get. And it was, 4X what I paid for it. And I'm not a Brady guy, but I'm happy to take profit on a Brady card. And so that's what it went down to. And then I took that money, right, and put it into paying for my sub. So that's just the kind of the mentality I take. And it seems to work for me. And I like activity. I like making a lot of moves.
Speaking of making moves, you've been making a lot of good ones lately. Let's talk about these one-of-one Romans you've been knocking out of the park and just kind of how it feels to get that.
It's one of the most fun I've had. And to be honest, it wasn't planned and it just happened. And I'll tell the story of just how it all ticked and tied together. And I think it's the importance of knowing people. I've been a Roman Reigns guy for a while. I've started to collect a lot of Roman Reigns. I liked Roman when everyone thought he sucked. I like just his presence. I like his look. And then when he, transitioned into tribal chief persona, he's the reason why I tune into the WWE product.
Yeah.
So to me, you just look at his history already. Look at the WrestleManias he's main evented. And this guy doesn't there's a lot of gas still left in his tank. So there's a lot to like about Roman Reigns. And I look at his market and I'm like, it's not like I compared him on my podcast this week. If you're looking at, you look at like the basketball market, you look at LeBron, you look at Jordan, you look at LeBron, and then you look at Luka. And the comps I put were, okay, and this is taking Hogan, this is taking Flair, all the vintage out.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking at the more modern, it's like, okay, so I'm going to say MJ's kind of like The Rock. I'm going to say LeBron's kind of like a Cena. And then I put like a Luka and Roman Reigns kind of as parallels. And so I look at Roman Reigns' prices and, people are paying, God knows what for Alexa Bliss. That cult following is nuts. And I was like, I really enjoy Roman Reigns. I think he's a generational talent. He's already headlined WrestleManias. Like, I know they're out there and I'm meeting them now through the art of war and through competition, but there's not a ton of like hardcore Roman guys out there. So my desire was like, all right, how can I be one of the top Roman Reigns collectors out there? And I didn't anticipate like the acceleration to happen how it does, but it usually just takes one card.
Yeah, that's it. So I'll get into kind of my response to that, but I've got to ask first, are you now a player collector of Roman Reigns by accident?
It was very serendipitous, but so my mindset right now is if there is a Roman Reigns card that's rare, scarce, shiny, if it's the qualifiers, I want that more than probably anything else. So yes, I am a Roman Reigns player collector.
That's awesome. And I think it's funny that you said you stumbled into it, because that's how I did with Karrion Kross. Like I did my video, I was like, maybe I've always liked this guy. Let's try prospecting on wrestling cards, because they were like $1, and I was like watching this guy, I watched him on AAA and Impact and the Indies and stuff like that. And then I see him on NXT, and it's kind of how like you tune in to WWE to watch Roman. I was tuning in to NXT just to watch Karrion Kross. We've seen how that went, but the thing is, it's been fun. It's inexpensive to do, and it just gets the ball rolling real quick. You get one card, and I just started with his base rookie card, and the next thing I know, I've got the full rainbow of the rookie card. So it's amazing how these things keep escalating. And then like he's been released, and I'm still buying. I just bought a Transcendent this morning for $30.
It's nuts. I saw that.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I've been trying to encourage more people to start player collecting in wrestling, because it's a fun chase, and I have fun doing it. You're, just listening to you talk about the passion that you have towards it. And I think it also kind of helps alleviate the people who say, I'm priced out. I can't afford Hogan All-Stars. You guys, you don't have to have those. Like there's Tony's collecting Dexter Loomis cards now. And I've seen all these other random player collections that are starting. I love it. So just talk a little bit about how that's affecting you within the wrestling card space. And if you have any other words for other people who want to start doing this.
Yeah. So I would say you hit on a lot of stuff that I'm really a believer on. And I think one of these big things, and I've noticed this in the wrestling card space a lot, is that there are a few cards that people talk about regularly, and people who are coming in feel like just because there are a few cards that people talk about or our price is significant, those are the cards that we as collectors need to go chase. Well, I've been down that path, not with wrestling cards, but in other avenues. And it's not fun. It lacks desire. And so I think for me, I watch current product, and I like certain guys, and I don't do this in other sports. Like my primary PC is Peyton Manning, and he doesn't play anymore. So having the ability to, typically what I do is I'm, watching something with the wife, and then I'll watch Rampage, and then I'll watch SmackDown taped after that. And so, but like just watching it and knowing like, all right, like Roman's like my guy, I'm invested in him, and just watching him every weekend, it just makes you more of a fan. And I think I love that about collecting kind of this ultra modern stuff. And also too, there's been this narrative around like, well, ultra modern's not collectible, and wrestling's not as popular. It's like I try to block all that stuff out and like focus in on like what I like. I like shiny, I like limited and serial numbered, and I want to be like the best of something. And to me, that's where an opportunity with Roman Reigns is. So I just encourage anyone who listens to your show, like there are so many passionate people in the wrestling card market. Everyone is very invested in helping and sharing and talking about what they like. Just because I'm on this podcast and I'm saying that I was fortunate to land a deal that got me the 2021 Roman Reigns Topps Chrome Superfractor doesn't mean you need to go out and start collecting Roman Reigns. Like find that opportunity for you, and think about the cards. Like there are Superfractors that pop up that I'll see on eBay, and I'll just be like, man, that's an amazing image. That's an amazing card. If only I collected that guy or that girl, like this would be the card I'd want. So I would think about the card first, and don't worry about the price. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Just like do what makes you happy,
Man, so many good segues there. I want to first start by saying being the best. I believe it was Chris on the crossover, one of the episodes that said trying to find be the best at something that you like. no matter what that is, whether it's a player, team, set, whatever. So I think that's a good idea. And what I was just talking about, like going back to Tony's Dexter Loomis collection, like that guy doesn't even wrestle half the time. And the fact that he's going all in on it, like, I love it. And on the flip side, you said, don't worry about the money, focus on the card and what makes you happy. I actually received a lot of flack from the whole Karrion Kross thing and others now. As I think I saw a statistic today where we've seen, like, just within a calendar year, we've seen 80 WWE releases and names.
Jeez.
So what do you like? You're preaching to the choir on this, I'm sure, but what do you have to say to those people out there that are maybe hesitant to start collecting some of these more ultra modern? I'm still a big fan of it, but especially because you can get it cheap. A lot of times when they're released, the prices of the big cards, even superfractors, become very affordable. So do you have any advice out there for people who may want to start going this route?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of movement within wrestling right now, especially in WWE. I mean, as we're recording this, there was more releases last night. I think the fact of the matter is, on the flip side, is that there's more options and opportunities outside of WWE than ever for talent to land on their feet and get work. And AEW is just one of several. I mean, we could go on forever. I know you and I are GCW fans, and GCW has created just a phenomenal platform to highlight really great talent, and what they're doing is one of my favorite things that's happened this year in wrestling. So I encourage people, if guys and gals are going to get released outside of your Bray Wyatt, which I would say Bray Wyatt wasn't the most collectible guy for whatever reason, like the chances are getting into these guys and gals, like from a price point, isn't probably high. So you're not going to break the bank. But just because someone gets released, and like a Ruby Riott Ruby Soho is a good example. Like, she got released. Now listen to her pops in AEW. Like you can be a Ruby Soho collector. Her Upper Deck cards are going to come out. You can go buy some of her cool stuff from Topps Chrome and Finest. And so I wouldn't let like the speculation of what could happen really impact what I would encourage people to look at. And I don't want to be the hype beast, and I don't want to be the hype machine, but fact of the matter is WWE Prism is going to change the game.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We're going to talk about that in just a second.
Okay. I won't dive too far into it, but I would just say, like, don't let what you can't control influence who you want to collect and how you want to collect.
I also want to pile on your Peyton Manning collection. You're like, he doesn't play anymore. And I think that's something that people kind of think, like, well, if this guy gets released, he's going to be out of the business in 2 years. What's the point of collecting him? Like, you can still collect people. Like, people are out there collecting, baseball cards from hundreds of years ago of people they never even saw play. So, like, there's collections that can be built. And I think people just need to stop and realize that, have fun first and foremost, worry about the other stuff later. Speaking of that, let's get into a little bit of like future wrestling. So we have the rise of like the indie sets, and there's a huge fan base coming out for this now, which I think is great. We've got the Panini news, which could potentially put more eyeballs on wrestling. But then we've got all the releases that from WWE. Does WWE sell? What does that do to wrestling? So where do you see, just kind of, you can take it any direction you want, the overall perspective of wrestling cards, in the next year or two?
I think if you're studying and you're paying attention to what has happened over the last couple months, they should be really strong indicators for what to expect. I have talked about the excitement that I was not expecting for Topps Chrome 2021.
Yeah.
So there was excitement there, and then a couple weeks after, there was the Panini news, and we can get to that. But then the Transcendent release, my goodness. I mean, Gelman's got a tracker out there.
Yep.
There's legitimately, this is the most competitive I have ever seen the wrestling card market right now around that product. Drake just picked up the Cena Superfractor. The Vince Superfractor, I think, is going to sell for the most in modern wrestling card history. I think that card is going to blow a lot of people's mind. It's up for auction right now as we record this. I know I want the Roman. I know several other people who want the Roman. So to me, like this competition, this excitement around modern, it wasn't like this last year. I don't remember it being that way. So I think you take that, and then, people are pumped about these indie sets. Like, people are watching AEW. People are posting these cards of like the first cards of these guys and gals, and that adds to the momentum. And then obviously the Panini news and WWE Prism and the timing right around WrestleMania. It's just, I'm a marketer. That's what I do for a living. And there just seems to be this drumbeat of momentum that is kind of going. And I don't know how high it's going to go, but I do know, and I get conversations, DMs and messages about this every day. When people start to open their eyes and realize like how much fun and how affordable wrestling cards can be, as opposed to what they're paying for speculation on the basketball side or the football side, that's when people are like, man, like I should spend like $1,000 on this and have fun for a couple months and see how things go. So I think I study parallels and trends, and I saw what Prism has done with, UFC, and it's the entry point for a lot of people. Yeah. So I'm optimistic.
WNBA and NASCAR started getting a following because of Prism.
100%. And I think it's because of the construct of those sets. There's a lot of collectors who like parallels, who like shiny stuff, and that's what Prism does best. And so we're going to get that opportunity to see that here in a few months.
It's funny we're talking about that, and we haven't even mentioned the AEW product, which is huge. Like, wrestling cards are getting so popular, yet it seems so small. It's interesting, and that actually leads me to my next point. The parallels between, let me back up. I think you would probably be the foremost person to speak to about this, because you understand this avenue of trading cards and you understand sports. So I've been making this comparison forever between Pokemon. I'm like, Pokemon is like, wrestling is real life Pokemon. And the more I hear people talk about F1, while I don't have it, like, I don't care for it. I keep listening to these things, and the reason people are saying F1 is fun, why F1 cards are valuable, why they like them. I'm like, you just explained wrestling cards. So with all of this exposure, like, why do you think more mainstream people are not jumping into wrestling cards? And I'm not saying from a monetary perspective, like, sure, if our cards go up in value, that's awesome, but just like getting its respect. Because I did like, I loved how that was the card ladder video they put out on their YouTube page. Like, wrestling was right in the middle. It had like a over 300% increase over the past, or since the pandemic. So that was excellent to see. But when do you think wrestling cards are going to get their respect from some of these other people outside of our hobby?
So I love the Pokemon comparison, and it's the easiest way I've used that, and I think I've taken that from you just in explaining to people. It's the easiest connection point because it's character-based nostalgia. So I love that and couldn't agree more. I think with F1, everyone didn't just wake up one day and just say, I love F1. I'm going to go buy these cards now that they're out. What happened was the way people get exposed to things has changed. We are a subscription-based economy. Everybody pays $9.99 a month. Maybe not everyone, but a majority of people pay $9.99 a month for Netflix. And people like episodic programming through Netflix, through other streaming providers. Well, what happened? F1 made the strategic decision to create this documentary style to gain exposure, to promote the drivers, to show the faces behind the helmets. And I have not seen it. I'm not into F1, but more power to everyone who are. I just haven't taken the time to watch it. But from what I hear, it's awesome. And I know because my former guy I used to work with watched it, had no desire, and all of a sudden he's watching the races. I have not seen something convert people from no care in the world to all of a sudden I'm a super fan watching these races. And that's just because it's good marketing. It's good content. And so when cards come out, inevitably people are like, okay, I collect cards. I've watched this series. I've maybe watched a race or two. I'm going to start collecting. So that's what I think happened with F1.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I think with wrestling, there needs to be that series, that's something. And I'm not sure it will happen with, Vince at the helm and giving the access that he needs, or that they would need in order to like promote the wrestlers in the way F1 did. But also, like you saw with AEW, Roads to the Top, I was like, this reality show after Dynamite, I was like, this is going to be stupid. And there's no way I'm going to watch this. And what did I do? I watched the first episode and I was like, you know what? Like, this is like less like Real Housewives. And it's more like getting people to know the people behind.
Almost like a vlog or something.
Yeah, it was that, but it did a good job of telling the stories and showing the humans behind people. Hardcores would say kayfabe is dead after watching it, but I liked it. I'm already a super fan, but I thought like something like that, maybe something a little more deeper, might get more exposure to a product like AEW and get more people sucked in and then interested in cards. So I think what needs to happen is something similar to what happened with F1 and like a documentary or a series in order to get people to get sucked into the product and watch it and then become fans.
I actually thought that was going to happen a little bit when Peacock took over WWE Network, because there was a lot of people already subscribed for like sports or The Office or whatever it is they like to watch. So I was like, oh, well, it's just going to be an extra tab. And I also think that WWE's put out, like, I just saw the Ruthless Aggression Part 2 is coming out, the documentary for that.
Sign me up.
Yeah, I think WWE does generally a pretty good job at their docu-style series, but it's just, I don't know, it hasn't caught on to the mainstream for some reason.
Can I plug one for your listeners? Because I found one buried. So I just had a daughter and I was on paternity leave and I was looking for like a program to watch. And I was like, Peacock sucks the way it's navigated. Yes. It's just not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah.
So I stumbled across this series from 2014, 10 episodes. It's called Rivalries. I never saw it before. And so the first episode and the second episode was Austin versus McMahon. And I watched that and I was sucked in the way it was shot. I was like, how did I miss this? You have Flair versus Dusty. I mean, it went through 10 awesome episodes. So I would encourage everyone, if you're feeling stale on the Peacock, go dig up Rivalries. I watched all 10 episodes and I wish there were 10 more to watch.
So we were talking about content. Let's talk a little bit about content creation. I've like lately been like hammering the drum. Like, if there's people out there that dig wrestling cards and feel like they have something to say, whether it's at a specific set, whether it's just going over your collection, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, I think we need more people out there talking about wrestling cards. So I want to first thank you for having the platform you do and talking about wrestling cards. But what advice would you have out there to anybody who's thinking, like, they have an idea, they're thinking about doing it, but they just don't feel like they have the equipment, or they're, camera shy, or don't want to talk? Like, what do you have to say to those people to get started?
Yeah, I would say, like, when I think about content creation, I don't necessarily think about like having something as robust as a podcast or a YouTube channel. I think that's where you can get to, but you can start by just having a social media account, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Like, those seem to be the primary. But I have noticed more and more people sharing wrestling cards on Instagram specifically, which is great. Like, I try, if it's something that I like, I try to repost it and tag the person, just because I think like that helps like get the ball rolling a little bit. But the one thing I don't see with a lot of, there are accounts out there that do this. I mentioned Gelman up front. He does a nice job of this, but, and obviously you and Tony do as well. I think more people need to share the why behind it, not just share the cards.
Yeah, the stories behind everything.
Yeah, share why you bought it, why it makes you feel good, like what it is about it, and tell some stories. Don't just show your cards. Use the caption to just do some explaining. And so, like, that's where I would start. It's like there are a lot of passionate wrestling card collectors. It's my favorite, like, small community in the hobby. I think people just need to the more we all share and the more we share our unique perspectives, I think the more it's going to grow. And so that would be my encouragement, is like, do I want more people to have podcasts and show? Hell yeah. Like, go, like, let's go. Like, I know, like, the Card Foundation guys, like, that's been a podcast a lot of people are gravitating towards, which is awesome. So I would just encourage people, like, just start on Twitter, start on Instagram, start sharing your unique perspective, share your pickups and tell why. I think the more you do that, you're going to get engagement. If I see it, I'm going to say something. And then if it amounts to something and you have a unique corner of the market and you want to share some stuff more deeper, then like spin up execute, spin up a podcast, spin up a YouTube show. Like I promise you, if it's around wrestling cards, I will listen or watch.
Yeah, me too. And speaking of that and content creation, a huge fan of your podcast and others within the sports card realm. And I've been trying to, I guess, convert people, saying like, if you go out and you listen to stuff that you're not necessarily into, you're actually going to learn a lot and can bring it back in. And while doing that, also making relationships along the way. So like what's your opinion on that as far as like consuming content that isn't necessarily in your lane, but then helps you come back to it?
Yeah. So all I could think about when you said convert is like imagining you, me, Tony, and we'll just throw Drake's PC in there, just dressed up as like the Wyatts. We're like the Wyatt family, like trying to convert people
awesome.
over. But
let's do it.
Let's do it. To your point, I never collected, never watched, never got into Pokemon. I never did it. I have no interest in buying Pokemon cards. However, I love listening to people talk about Pokemon and listening to Pokemon content because there's so much passion and people go into it and you can just feel it like they were kids and this is what they collected. And just the mindset and mentality when people are talking about Pokemon, like they're like small things that I'll take. I'll be like, I'll take that. And if you take those small things from an adjacent area and start applying it, like that's where I think magic happens. And so I think with wrestling cards, and this is something that's been long with Pokemon and other areas of the hobby, I think with wrestling cards, people want to say like there's opportunity with grading. There is, but it's not grading all wrestling cards. You can't just go grade something and it's a commodity, it's a 10 and people are going to want it. But like the ECW cards, like the shiny serial number cards of modern stars that you like look at the pop reports. Like, look, if there are 50 copies of a 2014 John Cena gold refractor, and I haven't looked at the pop report, but just say like 6 of those are graded by PSA, and you believe in wrestling cards, like go buy one of those cards raw and get it graded. Like that, there's no way you're going to lose money on that ever. Like I think having the patience, investing in the submission at a PSA, at SGC, at BGS, like doing that, those cards of the rare and scarce stars are only going to go up. And I think I was having a conversation with someone about this today on the price of a card. And I just said, like, this is spending the $150 in grading my, Roman Reigns Superfractor through PSA. Like that's betting on the future of wrestling cards. And that's just where I think it's going. And that's something I've learned and picked up on from other markets.
Brett, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today and, spread the word about wrestling cards. I'm going to have a link in the show notes so everybody can check out the podcast, but let everybody know where they can find you and what you're up to.
Yeah, Instagram and Twitter primarily are my channels. Definitely hop into my DMs if you hear this. I always love to talk wrestling cards. I drop episodes every Wednesday. It's usually just some thoughts I have, what I'm doing, what's going on Wednesdays and Friday. I try to bring on someone in the hobby, and typically it's someone I want to learn from, and hopefully the audience learns from too. So been doing Stacking Slabs for almost 20 years or 20 years. Geez, two years.
It feels honestly, it feels like 20 years as long as I've been listening, because I've been listening forever. I've been following you since you started. Some other content creators too, like they haven't been out for, maybe a year or two. And I was like, I never miss an episode. So it feels like it's 20 years. I get it.
Yeah, no, Zhan, I appreciate your support. You've been there from the start, but yeah, I try every episode to bring something wrestling card related in there. And so if you're listening to Zhan's channel, chances are you'll enjoy what I'm doing.
Well, thanks you guys for watching. Brett, thank you for your time. See you guys. Huge thank you to Brett McGrath from the Stacking Slabs Podcast for coming on the show today. Brett truly is one of the brightest minds in the hobby overall across multiple spectrums of cards. Make sure you go check out the Stacking Slabs Podcast. I've left a link to Brett's information below where you can find the podcast, you can find his social platforms. Subscribe to his podcast, leave a review, and once again, I want to just emphasize the fact that just because there's hobby content out there that's not wrestling cards doesn't mean you can't learn. I listen to a lot of content creators and watch a lot of content creators, and they're talking about cards and aspects of the hobby I'm not really interested in. But guess what? I take that information, kind of apply it to wrestling cards, apply it to what I do, and I've had a lot of advantages doing it that way and had a lot of success. So support content creators out there, even if it's not something that you're necessarily into. If you find good information or word of mouth spreads about a content creator putting out good stuff, check it out, give it a chance. It may help you out with your collecting. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It's greatly appreciated. It's free. It's the best way that you can help show your support for the Wrestling with Cards content. Give me a like, tell a friend, share it on social media. You can tag me in it. And don't forget, before you go, links below in the show notes for everything else I'm involved with. But until next time, click the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content. We'll see you there.